All right, folks, welcome back to the Taylor Tax Show, the podcast that helps highly paid, highly taxed, high profile, high net worth, and ultra high net worth taxpayers save a bunch on taxes legally. I'm Terrence Taylor. I'm the co-founder of Taylor Tax. I'm an enrolled agent and also have my MBA from Harvard. This is my partner, Big Al Donnell Jr. Say what's up, Big Al?
What's going on, everybody? I'm Big Al, and I love my mama.
Hey, Big Al is also an enrolled agent and also has his MBA. And this is episode 49. And today we're talking about Trump, tariffs, and taxes. You know, we had to go there. And just so you know, we plan to cover a few things that we think will be helpful for you. So, first thing we plan to talk about is tariffs and the tax angle to tariffs. Second thing is the golden visa. Third, how Trump is talking about eliminating taxes on people who make less than 150,000 per year in income. And then the fourth thing is the impact of tariffs on some of our clients and some of our potential clients. So, Big Al, the first thing we have to do is to let folks know that for the past 45 days, we've been head down in taxes because it's tax season. And folks, just so you know, and I'm sure you know this, most people tend to wait. The bulk of people we work with tend to wait until about the last minute to
Yeah.
really focus on their taxes. So that means it's crunch time. So you haven't heard from us because we've been head down and knee deep in taxes and tax returns and helping folks to save a bunch on taxes legally. Now we're ready to resume and to help folks get educated about what's going on in the tax landscape. So, Big Al, I know you spent a lot of time thinking about some of these aspects, but let's first start off just talking about the tariffs and the tax angle, right?
Yeah.
So the first thing I wanted to share, and I would love for you to jump in, is this is Trump looking at creating revenues or external revenues. You know how we have the IRS, that stands for Internal Revenue Service. So
Yeah.
it feels like he's trying to create a ERS, an External Revenue Service. What are your thoughts on tariffs and taxes?
Well, I'll tell you this is that like this range of activity that Trump has going on, I call him Donnie T, all right, is his it could be it feels like a whirlwind, but
Mhm.
from what I understand, it's all in with the goal in mind of balancing the budget and getting this $36 trillion that we owe down to zero. All right. So now
Mhm.
with the tariffs, to me, it seems like tariffs are his number one silver bullet to try to knock this down. Now, I was looking up an article, and this is an article from the school he went to, not MIT, Wharton School of
Yeah.
Business. Talks
Mhm.
about the economic effects of President Trump's tariffs. And what it says here is that his tariff plan is projected to raise significant revenue over $5.2 trillion over the next 10 years.
Mhm.
So, with that being the case, it looks like if this does go into effect, I really do think that an external revenue service would be created in order to
Mhm.
help to make sure that all of this is facilitated. And I might be jumping the gun a little bit because I want to talk a bit about this doesn't just affect larger corporations. I've got
Mhm.
clients that are affected by the whole tariffs as
Okay,
well.
hold on, hold on.
Yeah.
Hold that for the end. Hold that for the
Yeah.
end.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Okay, so beautiful. What a nice setup. So it would also be nice for us to see whether these basically half a trillion, so 500 billion per annum per year that the
Hmm.
tariffs could raise, is that going to make a dent in the taxes that are collected? Because if he is going to replace the IRS with an ERS,
Hmm.
then we need to understand, well, how much is the IRS collecting? And I know you did some research for us to show how much money the IRS collects annually from taxes. So can you share your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. So the IRS. Matter of fact, let me just pull up
Yeah,
their
and share your
budget report.
screen. Share your screen. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's here. Let me know if you see it.
Mm-hmm.
But do you
It's
see the? Okay, there it is.
yeah. It just came up.
All right, cool. So this is the IRS's fiscal year 2024 budget in brief. And what we have going on here is this: is let's see, the IRS is bringing in about 14. I think this is in thousands, so about $14 trillion in income
Okay.
per year,
Mm-hmm.
and they're spending. Wait a minute. No, I'm sorry. About $20 trillion per year from all the different sources. Some of it's from tax revenue, some of it's from penalties and things of that nature. Let's see. The budget request contains program increasing almost $1 trillion. That includes resources. But yeah, I'll say about 16 to $20 trillion a year. 14 to $20 trillion a year is what the IRS brings in annually, or brought in 2024.
Okay, hold on, Big Al. I think this is showing what the IRS's budget is. I think what you shared was there was a very nice article that actually talked about the amount that the IRS collects. That's it. That's it.
Okay, got it.
That's the one. Yeah.
Okay. And this is the report from it. But yeah, so
Yeah.
during fiscal
Yeah.
year 2024, the IRS collected more than $5.1 trillion in tax revenue. I'm sorry.
That's right. You're absolutely spot on. So interestingly, the IRS is bringing in about 5 trillion a year,
Yeah,
at least as of 2024 tax year, and the tariffs will save about 10% of that at 500 billion, so 500 billion, right?
yeah,
And one of the first things you shared with me is like, yeah, but the tariffs might be a a means, but they're not the only means
correct.
to Trump's plan. So the next thing that we could talk about is that golden visa or that
Yes.
gold card visa, which I know you loved because when you talked about it, you sounded so excited. I was like, folks, let me just put my hand up. I told Big Al, like, I don't see this happening.
Yeah.
I should not. First of all, don't listen to me, and then if we're betting, definitely don't bet on what I tell you to bet on. Tell us how the gold card visa is doing, Big Al.
Well, yeah, so the thing is, the Golden Visa is literally here to replace the EB-5, I believe, visa, which
Mhm.
meant that you pay a taxpayer would pay $800,000 to get a visa here. But now what he's
Mhm.
doing is he's raising it up to $5 million and calling it the Golden Visa, or someone calling it the Trump card. Uh, anyway, so apparently, according to this Forbes article, in a move that has sparked both intrigue and controversy, U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick announced the sale of 1,000 gold cards this week, raising $5 billion in a single day.
Wow.
$5 billion in a day. So now their
Wow.
goal for it, and this is what I was
Mhm.
talking about earlier about
Mhm.
EB-5s were created in
Mhm.
1990
Mhm.
as a method.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so now what they're hoping to do
Yeah.
is,
How much could they raise? What are they planning for us?
yeah, so they estimate that 37 million people worldwide can afford to buy the gold card. But they're
Mhm.
saying if 200,000 of these things are sold at $5 million a piece, that would bring in $1 trillion. But
Now we're getting somewhere.
if
Yeah.
they could scale the program to 10 million cars, that would generate 50 trillion. Now, clearly, that 10 million would be over the course of at least a decade, if not more. But
Mm.
still, $50 trillion completely eclipses the $36 trillion debt that we have.
Yeah, the national debt. Yeah.
Yeah, if this could be an actual thing of
Okay.
selling 10 million of those cards.
All right. So folks, I'm gonna put my hand up again. I did not think this was gonna happen, and I didn't think that they had thought about this in this manner. So think about that. The tariffs brings in about 500 million a year. Sorry, 500 billion a year, 500 billion a year. The gold card visa already has brought in five, right? So you
Yeah,
said already brought in 5
billion.
billion
Yeah,
in a
in a
single
single
day.
day.
It
Uh-huh.
has the potential to reach 1 trillion
Correct.
when
If they do
200,000 of them
200,000. Mm-hmm.
are bought, I suppose, or
Yep.
granted. And the ultimate master plan is it could raise up to 50 trillion. So, I mean, these are huge numbers, but there is something going on here which shows that Trump is thinking about replacing internal revenue with external revenue. And
Yeah.
should these two programs together, these two initiatives together work, tariffs as well as the gold card visa, he could raise significant revenues for the US. Big
Yeah.
Al, I know that there are probably some downside to the tariffs, and I don't know if you wanted to go back and cover those because I know in our prep you were telling me like, hey, imports and loss of
Yeah.
revenues.
Yeah. Definitely. So, conventional effects on revenues and imports
Hmm.
says they project that tariffs will raise 5.2 trillion in new revenue over the next 10 years,
Hmm.
even after accounting for reduced import demand due to higher prices.
Okay.
Yep. So now over the next 30 years, tariffs are expected to raise revenues of 16.4 trillion, and this revenue can be used to reduce federal debt to
Hmm.
relative to the baseline pad.
Hmm.
But yeah, but it will reduce total imports by $7 trillion over the next decade and reduce imports by 37.2 trillion
Hmm.
over the next 30 years. So it would reduce imports and increase revenues.
Okay.
Now, the goal though is if it's going to reduce those imports are then going to serve, those imports are then would need to be replaced by American made
Hmm.
replacements. So
Understood.
the goal is that America has lost its ability to be an industrial manufacturing powerhouse.
Hmm.
It's now been, which I think the number one is now China, starting
Hmm.
to be India and Mexico, and
Hmm.
now for the U.S. to regain its preeminence in
Hmm.
industrial manufacturing. And the reason being is because this has a direct play on our overall security. Because if we go into war and all of our guns, bullets, ships, and tanks are built overseas,
Hmm.
then they could jump the prices up or shoot those prices up, and now we have to pay them and go into even deeper debt or have to suffer some sort of a strategic defeat if they cut off a port that would transport. Anyways, there's a million reasons as to why this is the case, but of course, everything is a day by day basis. Stuff changes. Trump has new
Hmm.
plans and other actions, but yeah. So these were the areas where they were trying to make more money. They're also
And
trying.
that,
They're also
yeah, you
hoping
go.
to
Hmm.
reduce our expenses as well to help get this budget in order.
And as before we jump to that, the third thing that we wanted to highlight for folks are the conversations which we've now learned to take as plans from Trump to stop taxing people who make 150,000 or less in the
That's right.
US. So
That's
let's
right.
talk about that and then we'll talk about some of the savings that they're looking to do.
Of
Right.
course.
So what would be the impact? I mean, first of all, let's just say this. That would be fantastic for Americans who make 150 or less,
Yep.
not to have to pay any federal income tax. I don't know what the states are going to do, but that would be fantastic from a federal income tax point of view. So tell us your thoughts on this and what the impact of this could be.
Well, yeah. So the thought on this is that a lot of people were saying that Trump is only doing tax changes in order to help the wealthy, the
Mhm.
rich and wealthy. That's why the corporate tax rates went from 25% to 21% back in 2017, and that's why I guess the salt limitations aren't actually helping the wealthy. But if if taxes were to be eliminated for households that bring in $150,000 or less, matter of fact, I need to even look up the average household income of in America.
Well, remember, one of the things we learned as we prep for this is that 25% of taxes that are collected on households that make 150,000 or less.
Got it. That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. So yeah, so that I tell you, with the average household bringing in less than $80,000,
Mm,
um, then this would make a huge impact. Now, what this article is stating is that
mm,
the revenue, uh, even if enacted on a targeted manner, we estimate such a change would reduce revenue by roughly $10 trillion through 2035 if applied to income taxes only, and 15 trillion if applied to employee side payroll taxes as well.
mm,
So the thing is that I think it'll be great for Americans, but every economic move made, it's kind of like Newton's. I don't know if it was his third law or second law, but every action
oh,
has an opposite and equal reaction. So
mhm,
imagine this: you, if there's two people, a husband and a wife, are making $140,000 for the year.
mhm,
All right. Or yeah, I'm not exactly sure how they would enact it, if it's AGI or taxable income, because somebody could
mhm,
make 300 grand and have enough write-offs to get them
mhm.
down to 150. But so let's
Right.
just say they're making 70 and 70, $140,000, and now they don't have to pay taxes on it. Out of that $140,000, especially if it's no FICA taxes on the employee side and no income taxes, please
Mhm,
believe out of that 140 grand, that's an extra 40 grand that they have. I'll say at least 30,
mhm, mhm,
$35,000
mhm,
in their pocket, in their net pay.
mhm,
Now, what are they
mhm,
doing with this $35,000? If we already know that millionaires are living paycheck to paycheck, please
mhm,
believe people that are a tenth of a millionaire, so to say,
mhm, mhm,
uh, are making. By the way, I've known people that are millionaires that make 150K or less a year
mhm,
because
mhm,
they
mhm.
built it up over time. But
Right.
anyways, what I'm trying to say is that in that situation, they're going to spend it on something else.
Mhm,
And I think, now that I'm thinking about it, if Trump creates this closed circuit system, because in effect, Trump's doing nothing different than what China did back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, where they
mhm,
closed China off from the world in order to focus on its insular proliferation. And that's
mhm,
how they built up this huge manufacturing warehouse. All right.
mhm,
So now, if Trump effectively closes off America to the rest of the world and says, guess what? Anybody that wants to bring uh, products in, you pay us 20, 30, 40, 50, 100% tariffs, then people are going to stop bringing things in. Then America has to make it themselves. And then Americans are going to spend more money on American made stuff because they're not being taxed on the money. So now it's just, to me, if he creates this closed loop and this goes on for 4 years or 8 years, if another Republican gets in place after him, this could potentially create that 10-year situation where we can balance the budget completely, or it can blow up in our face. But nonetheless, I don't see any of these ideas or strategies working independently.
mhm,
If it was only tariffs, but yet and still the manufacturing in America isn't growing, then what would be the point of tariffs? And then
mhm,
if we're doing all this manufacturing in America, guess what's going to happen with all the manufacturing in America? Prices are going to go up
mhm,
because we have labor laws that China and India and Mexico don't have that require us to pay these uh, what do you call it, minimum hourly rates and so forth. So now with the prices going up, the only way Americans are going to be able to afford this increase or inflation in prices is if we don't have taxes on the first 150,000, or people that make less than 150 grand don't have taxes. So if he can't get this tax under, or no taxes below 150 grand, then American manufacturing may not survive the increased costs of not having slave labor, child labor,
mhm,
phantom labor, et cetera, that a lot of these other countries have. So now that's tariffs, that's reducing taxes, and then he's also talking about getting rid of overtime tax. I'm not sure if I mentioned that to you. So
Yeah.
imagine getting rid of overtime tax. So
Mhm.
now somebody that's working and making $20 an hour, and they're working 40 hours a week. Guess what? They'll work 60 hours a week, and that's time and a half.
Mhm.
So they can literally double their money. You can have one person in the household literally double their money by just one spouse working 20 hours of overtime and no taxes on it. And imagine both spouses doing that. This can literally proliferate the working class and set America in a good situation. I think there is some sort of implosion component if
Mhm.
anything falls off this maze of
Mhm.
economic policy. But
Mhm.
nonetheless, it's exciting to talk about, to think about, and from a tax standpoint, because yeah, I think it'll be great if people that households that make less than 150 grand have no taxes
Oh,
charged. What do you think?
yeah, that would be fantastic. To anything that saves people a bunch on taxes legally,
Yeah,
we're all for, right? All right, Big Al. And then one of the things that we looked into in prepping for this podcast is, well, what is Doge up to? And are they able to save some of the costs that the government currently has? Because on the one hand, we know that Trump is raising revenues through tariffs, and it sounds like he's going an external revenue service approach to that. On
yeah,
the other hand, we know that he also is raising money through this gold card visas. And then
yep,
we know that for the American taxpayer, he's looking to reduce how much taxes they pay to the government, which means the government will be getting less in revenues.
yep,
So to offset the reduction in revenues, Doge is supposed to be finding huge cost savings. Let's look into that. Talk about that.
they're trying to cut $1 trillion this year alone. A
Mm,
lot of articles are talking about how they are so far behind with arriving at that component, but I think they've cut 150 billion so far, which means they got another 850 billion to cut in the next 8 months. But
mhm,
yet and still, 150 billion in 2 months isn't nothing to wince at, I would say.
mhm, mhm,
So but yeah, they're looking to cut $1 trillion this year, and I think how much are they looking to cut over a 10-year period? I think it was 5 or 10 trillion. Let's see. But yeah, so as of March 3rd, Doge claimed savings of 105 billion. That's
mhm,
more than double the Department of Homeland Security's spending.
mhm,
Where else did it say? But all in all, do you know that our interest on our $36 trillion worth of national debt, it's
mhm,
about $200 million a day in interest that we're paying. So now over a year, I think it takes about $1 trillion. We're paying about $1 trillion in interest, or a little over $1 trillion in interest on our $36 trillion in debt. So in effect, how I'm looking at it is like whatever Doge can save, if Doge can save this $1 trillion a year,
brilliant. Yeah.
it's
Mhm,
just covering the current level of debt. So it's keeping
mhm,
us at bay instead of top of the principal that is owed, which then will cause us to owe even more. So if Doge can cover the interest payments, if we can refinance, you know, a fourth of the debt, I think, we've all heard by now that the reason for the stock market scare, Liberation Day, April 2nd, I believe the stock market had its largest drop since March of 2025, the announcement of COVID. It lost $6 trillion in 2 days. 2 trillion, $6 trillion in 2 days on April 2nd or April 3rd, April 2nd and 3rd, or April 3rd and 4th, after the announcement of Liberation Day when he put all these tariffs in place. But the idea behind it by some is that if the stock market goes crazy, everybody rushes to something less risky, which are the bond markets. Tons of people are rushing to the bond markets. The bond rates fall. And if the U.S. could refinance the $9 trillion of our debt that is supposed to be refinanced this year, then we could lower, reset our interest rates. Kind of what everybody's trying to do with these high interest rates. I got a loan that's 7.125% on my house, and I'm waiting for the interest rates to fall so I can refinance that. Same concept, but for the national debt. But yeah, so there's a lot of moving parts. I think that's going to help. We'll see, but like if they're slashing interest rates, slashing costs, covering interest, and making money from tariffs and these golden visas or Trump cards, then maybe there is a path forward. But it will have its commensurate share of punitivity and blame at the U.S., where we're going to lose a lot of friendships and a lot of partnerships and a lot of stuff with other countries. But yeah,
Okay.
that's my thoughts. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah, and then if you look at the last two things, so eliminating taxes on folks who make 150K a year or less, and what Doge is looking to save, they almost offset each other. So we're looking at 1 to 1.5 billion lost in tax revenues from eliminating the taxes on folks who make 150,000 or less. And you also highlighted the talk about eliminating taxes on overtime, for example, as well. So could be potentially more. And then Doge is looking to save about $1 trillion. So right in line with the lower end of the impact of eliminating the taxes. So Big Al, let's bring this home. Let's talk about what impact we're seeing with our clients when it comes to tariffs, and what impact tariffs may have on potential clients, whether they're small business owners or folks who are W-2s, but I've been using some of the strategies we've been recommending to save on taxes, to save legally on taxes. So go ahead, share with us a few stories.
Yeah, I got quite a few clients that are horse parents. All right, because for anybody that owns horses, they know that they don't see horses as just these objects or pets. These are their babies. All right, so
yeah,
just had some clients.
Big Al, just to jump in quickly here. So we know a bunch of friends who call their pets fur babies. So if folks are calling pets fur babies, you can definitely guess that horses are also considered babies or family members. Yeah,
correct,
go ahead.
100%. So yeah, some of them too just got back from Ireland purchasing the horse for around 40 grand. But now we have to look into what are these tariff costs going to be, because that was in February. The horse hadn't been delivered yet. So tariffs were about 25%. So he was going to have to pay an extra $9,500 to $10,000 on getting that horse into the U.S., which was the whole purpose and goal of them purchasing the horse. So now that there's a moratorium, a 90-day moratorium, guess what? Shipment costs are extra high because everybody knows that there's this huge demand on getting things shipped immediately. So, but nonetheless, so now we're having to do some tax planning around strategically bringing the horse in and making sure that they pay as little tax as possible. Then I've got other clients that are selling products. And a lot of the products they haven't shipped, they haven't made. They purchased the molds, created the molds and purchased them in China. They're having them made in China and shipped over here. So now they've already started looking at India, because India has a smaller amount of tariffs than China. So they're looking at an iterative approach. And then they're going to be flying to China to pick up all their molds and physically bring them to India so India can make them. And then there are some that are looking at even trying to do it in Mexico. So now Like literally, this isn't just affecting large big box stores like Costco, Sam's Club, or Walmart or Target. These are actually hitting middle America, so to say, where there's a small business owners that are clients of ours that have businesses that make less than $1 million a year, but yet and still having a huge impact by these tariffs because it's adding an extra 10 to 20% expense to their bottom line, and most of these companies don't have a 10 or 20% profit margin. So it's creating an entirely new paradigm that entrepreneurs have to shift into in order to be able to cut costs in other ways. Or what most people do is they increase the price, and that's where this whole inflation component comes into play. But once again, if this closed circuit works out where taxes are eliminated for those that make less than $150,000, they should have an extra buffer in their pocket to accommodate the inflation increase should that happen sooner than later. We'll all feel it, but it'll be less felt because there's more money in your pocket. So even if taxes drop for people that make less than 150 grand, don't go and plan to buy a brand new vehicle and trips all around the world. It's going to balance itself out. It always does.
Okay. So folks, we've covered a lot. So let's bring it home, Big Al. Trump, tariffs, and taxes. So what's the bottom line? The bottom line is it looks like President Trump has a plan, and his plan is to raise revenues through external sources. The potential of creating an external revenue service. And we're seeing that the two initiatives that he's pushing right now are external focus. So the first one are the actual tariffs themselves, which we know can raise a certain amount of money. We spoke about that. We also looked at the gold card visa or the Trump card visa. And that in its first day that it was reported, the sales from that already generated 5 billion, and we know that 200,000 of those can generate 1 trillion. And we know that if this works out wildly successfully, we can look at 10 million people being able to buy those gold card visas or Trump card visas, and that will bring $50 trillion to the US, which is more than the current national debt of 36 or 37 trillion. So those are the external sources, which implies that he's looking at creating an external revenue service and potentially getting rid of the internal revenue service. So we also looked at the impact of getting rid of the IRS and specifically looked at his plan to reduce or eliminate federal taxes on people who make 150,000 or less per year. So we looked at that impact, and we also looked at what Doge is trying to do in terms of savings to offset that impact of reducing the revenues. And we concluded with a few examples of how clients that we work with are being impacted by tariffs and the thinking that it will be required to help people to thrive in this situation. So that's what we have time for. We really appreciate you sticking with us. And for those who stuck with us till the end, if this was valuable and helpful for you, give us a thumbs up, like the video, and subscribe to the channel. All right. Thanks, folks. See you soon.
Cheers.